here in his round 11 match versus AJ Kerrigan. See Tim on the left, AJ over on the right. The Merfolk player mentioned also has made a name for himself in judging and writing. This could be his breakout tournament, though.
Yeah. Sussino's deck looks beautiful. See a foil 7th edition sleight of hand there.
Cast off, a snow-covered island.
Foil snow-covered island.
Curse Catcher for Kerrigan. Now, when a player starts on sleight of hand, you just assume they're Storm at that point?
There's no way it's a fair deck, right? Storm is definitely on the short list, the most likely option.
You see Tim willing to make a trade there. He goes and casts a second sleight of hand into a Curse Catcher. But AJ not taking the bait, he'll just let it resolve.
The Curse Catcher's the ceiling for the impact is it actually messes up your combo turn. You're going to be casting a bunch of cantrips anyway, so I like just playing heads up into it.
Yeah, trying to combo through, there's a couple ways Storm combos. It can either make a lot of mana on one turn and cast Past in Flames. If he's going to try to do that, Curse Catcher is a land destruction spell for 1.
Yep.
If the other way that they win is through Pyromancer Ascension, and then they just get a lot of value. If that's the way this Tim's going, then the Curse Catcher would have been better off sacrificed.
Yes.
Harbinger of the Tides for AJ. Sussino end-step Thought Scours himself. He now has 2 Sleight of Hands, an Electromancer, and that Thought Scour in the graveyard.
Though with Sussino leading with the cantrip on turn 2, Kerrigan knew that the Ascension was not coming down on that turn, so it seems unlikely that Sussino already had it, especially with it being a redundant cantrip. If he had Ascension, he would have cast it there.
Red mana, Shivan Reef dealing some damage to Sussino. He's going to cast Mana Morphos into that Curse Catcher. Will AJ take the bait? And no, he is on point with what he wants this Curse Catcher to be doing, and that's beating down.
Yeah, he really wants to start picking up some lords and turning this clock into something that Sussino can't race.
Well, it looks like we have a plan now from Sussino's side. The Mana Morphos drew him into one of his 4 copies of Pyromancer Ascension. So, plays a 3rd land tapped and passes. Now we have to start looking at what cards are in Sussino's graveyard.
Right, he's got 2 Sleight of Hands, he's got the Mana Morphos, and he has a Thought Scour, so any copies of those gain tremendous value for him. He really wants those specific cards in his hand so he can start comboing off once he gets the Ascension online. And Kerrigan just has to find a way to kill him. With the Ascension now, that Curse Catcher is not going to meaningfully counter any spells.
Yeah, even if they're countered, even if the spells are countered, the Ascension gets a charge counter.
Right.
Or quest counter, actually. There we go. That's the type of counter it makes. Looks like we have the first of our many lords from AJ Kerrigan. He'll swing for 5, then play a second Curse Catcher. Tim down to 12. And the question is from Tim, does he have 1 or 2 turns here before AJ will kill him?
Exactly. On the table, he's on a 2-turn clock, but any additional lord makes him dead next turn.
Right, okay, so the board right now looks like it swings for 9.
Yep.
Right, 1 more lord would make that 13.
And Kerrigan led with Harbinger on turn 2, overcasting a lord, which made it feel like he probably didn't have a lord on that turn.
Okay.
Which can make you think that he has to top deck a lord if he's going to kill you now. One way or the other, though, Sussino's very limited on time. He needs to get this Ascension online as fast as possible. You might see him, if he has some Mana Morphos in his hand, try to get kind of greedy and go for it this turn. If he can chain those together, get the Ascension online without costing any mana, and try to make a big lethal turn now.
Yeah, that's one of the things is that when you untap with Ascension, the hope is that you can immediately put 2 counters on it on the following turn.
Right. And Mana Morphos is the only spell that would do that at the cost of 0 mana currently, unless he has double Ritual of some variety.
All right, and here come the counters. So Sussino's going to be doing something this turn. Blue mana, red mana, storm counters. Unlike its legacy counterpart, this is just a 2-color deck.
Yep. And we have the Caleb Shear storm counter there.
And you see Sussino being actually conservative with his life points here. If he casts the first ritual off Steamvent's Shivan Reef, that shows that he may not be trying to win this turn as much as he's hoping to sweep Kerrigan's board. Normally what you'll do is if you're just trying to combo, you'll leave all your Shivan Reefs untapped as your mana sources.
Yeah, you would use the island as it provides the fewest possible colors.
So we have Pyretic Ritual making 3 red. And this is the danger, is he has to do all of this into double Curse Catcher.
Right. Until the Ascension is online, those Curse Catchers are a lot more tricky. Though if he just casts some spells that can get AJ to sacrifice the Curse Catchers, suddenly AJ only has 5 power on the table. So he buys a little bit of time that way.
Yeah, so it's a neat decision here from AJ. If he uses his Curse Catchers, Tim will have to pay for them using this spell using his lands, and he'll actually run himself out of blue mana for the turn, unless he has a Manamorphose. Now, if he sacrifices them both, Tim may just pass the turn back to AJ, as you were saying.
Right.
It'll resolve. 3 red mana in the pool for Sussino.
This is a really interesting turn for Sussino. Not surprising to see him rethinking things after the spell resolves. You never know with that Curse Catcher exactly how far you're going to go into this combo turn.
I mean, or even if he has the combo. If Tim's dead on the board here, what he's hoping to do is bait out some Curse Catchers.
Yeah, if his hand is just non-functional, he's just hoping to cast some things that force the action on the Curse Catcher to buy some time that way.
Where to next? Looks like we're tapping a Shivan Reef. That will be for blue mana. Looks like we have at least 1 Desperate Ritual, perhaps 2. I think he's going for the Splice play. This is Desperate Ritual splicing on Desperate Ritual. If this resolves, Tim will get 6 red mana.
This is a fancy one that you usually don't see outside of Kamigawa Limited.
And now this is threatening enough that AJ may respond.
Yeah, so interesting thing about Splice as a mechanic is it adds the other card's ability onto that card.
So AJ can counter this if he chooses to sacrifice both Curse Catchers, but he won't get, he'll only get 1 of the 2 Desperate Rituals, as one of them's in Sussino's hand still.
Right. So he'll counter the entire effect on the stack, but Sussino will still have the other Desperate Ritual in his hand.
Which I guess where he wants it to be, right? He has a Pyromancer Ascension in play.
Yeah, you can get some counters, and if he can get these Curse Catchers off the table here, he'll get another turn.
And here we go. AJ is forced, uses both Curse Catchers to tap to counter the spell. I was interested to see if AJ would sacrifice 1 or both Curse Catchers there. Tapping Tim off blue may have been enough.
Yeah, it's the nightmare scenario if Tim just has another Manamorphose in his hand, though.
Sure, a Manamorphose would be bad. I guess a Past in Flames would also be very difficult.
Right.
So we're back to AJ Kerrigan. Tim's still at 12. He used that Shivan Reef, or both Shivan Reefs rather, for colorless mana that turn. This has taken a lethal swing off the board for AJ this turn.
So now it's a Lord over the course of this turn or next turn that would put Sussino on a turn 2-turn clock.
So Tim's down to 8. AJ plays a 4th land and a copy of Master of Waves. Devotion of 5. That's almost certainly lethal next turn. A Master of Waves with protection from red, not going anywhere.
Yeah, something like a big Grape Shot turn could clean up the elemental tokens, but it would leave the Master behind.
And Tim knows that. You see him go right back to the mana counters on his turn. So this is Sussino's 5th turn. Goblin Electromancer. This card is a huge player in the deck. Land 5. And yeah, it looks like we are off to the races. Tim acting like someone who is confident in his board state. Second spell is a Desperate Ritual. He has 3 red mana. Remember, he only paid 1 for that thanks to Electromancer. And he gets
last cards of Past in Flames. He's really going off here.
Oh, I think it is. And here we go. Past in Flames. All the cards in Sussino's graveyard will now have flashback. So it looks like we have 3 rituals, those 2 sleight of hands, and I think most importantly, that Manamorphose.
Still missing a payoff card, but he has a lot of redraws to find it now.
Oh, this is great. So you flash back the first Desperate Ritual for 1 mana, and now you see the Ascension is online. Tim has 3 red and 1 Shivan Reef left. So he's going to go ahead and cash in these rituals that are doubled. Each of them now costs 1 and makes 6. They're +5s.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good return on 1 mana.
You see here, Manamorphose, cast for 1. It'll make 2 blue and draw a card. Then it'll make 2 more blue and draw a card with the second ability. It's the 6th spell of the turn for Sussino. He's going to have to get his way up to 20 spells. Really, though, once he finds Grape Shot, we are almost already lethal.
Yeah, with the Grape Shot there, he has enough mana where he can cast that, do a bunch of damage, and then flashback Past in Flames to give the Grape Shot flashback, and then cast the Grape Shot again.
Exactly. So here's Gitaxian Probe, Desperate Ravings, both for Sussino. They are spells. He's up to 7 spells cast. Yeah, he's just searching for Grape Shot, and you see 10 mana in his mana pool. It's almost unthinkable that he doesn't find it.
Yeah, the cards that don't redraw for him are his lands and his additional Pyromancer Ascensions. Though given that he could just have a bunch of Gitaxian Probes in his hand, even another Ascension here is not a terrible draw.
Yeah, and you see what he did here. There was some fancy spell sequencing there for Sussino. He cast the Gitaxian Probe and responded to it with his own Desperate Ravings. That's why they happened in the other order. Grape Shot, flashback, Grape Shot. Then that will be the game for Tim Sussino. So he storms his way through game 1.
And game 1 is going to be the easy one for him here.
Yeah, when you're playing these kind of decks, usually that's how all your matches work.
We're going into hard mode.
All right, well, let's take a look first at the sideboards. For Tim Sussino, he has a Defense Grid, 3 Blood Moons. That's actually one of the things I like the most about Storm, for the record, is that you can do that. 2 Echoing Truths, 4 Lightning Bolts, 3 Empty the Warrens, a Flame Slash, and a Shatterstorm.
So the Lightning Bolts and the Flame Slash, if you wanted to just slow down the Merfolk's Cloak, those are options here. Just slow down the clock. Anytime you're faced against a blue deck with Storm, I assume that you just bring the Defense Grid in. Merfolk is not known for having a lot of counter spells, though you have to suspect that there's some in the sideboard here. So I like Defense Grid just as a must counter spell to be bringing in here.
Yeah, interestingly, against Hate, a lot of the times, this is one of those things, in Legacy Storm, our players they bring in Chain of Vapor in every matchup.
Yep. Just bring in Echoing Truth. 1
Echoing Truth every matchup, and a lot of Storm players, I know Andrew Shrout, one of the Storm pilots, believes this, Empty the Warrens comes in every matchup as well.
Yeah, that way you have a lot more hands that you can just cast the contents of your hand. Particularly against Merfolk, you kind of have your combo turn just lose to Master of Waves, which is a little awkward.
Yeah, that might maybe not every matchup. The idea is that whether your opponent's graveyard hating you or discarding against you, if you just dump your hand on turn 2, that plays around most of the hate.
It's relatively common for Merfolk to have Relic of Progenitus in their 75, as we see Kerrigan has it in his sideboard, so I can see an argument for the empty plan.
And so looking at Kerrigan's sideboard, oh my goodness. So we have 3 Spell Pierce, 2 Gutshot, 4 Hurkyl's Recall, 3 Negates, and 3 Relic of Progenitus.
I'm expecting
brutal.
9 cards coming in here. 3 Spell Pierce, 3 Negate, 3 Relic of Progenitus. All of these cards are excellent.
So I guess what I would want to ask you then is what comes out for them in this deck?
So he has some creatures that are just not what he wants here. The Harbinger of the Tides should be coming out. He has a copy of Muldrifter in his main deck. I love it.
He said he Essence Fluxed it when the last time I talked with him. How good is that?
On the topic of Essence Flux, probably a card that's coming out here.
All right.
He has 3 Dismembers in his main deck. There's some argument for leaving maybe a copy of Dismember in to catch an Electromancer, though I assume at least 2 of those are coming out. There's a question regarding Spreading Seas here. I think you do like it because red mana is very important for Sussino. Maybe you like it on the play, don't like it on the draw.
I don't know. I was always happy when people would Spreading Seas me.
It's going to get some of your hands, but not a lot of your hands.
When he's on the play, I guess I guess I'm with you if he's on the play, but generally Storm has too much red mana and not enough blue.
Sure.
So giving them more blue, unless you get it all.
And it only takes starting with 1 red source on the combo turn. You start casting rituals, and you have an abundance of red mana.
So I could have all islands play a Steam Vents in combo, and it's not that bad.
Yeah.
We'll see. So players are going to get ready for game 2 here. We have in our standard format, first of all, it's going to be our second format today, so we're going to have plenty of standard action starting with round 13. Also, something coming up in standard, this is in just under 2 months, we have the regional championships coming up. This is the Season 3 regionals, and we want to tell you about those. We have the exclusive Wings of Glass playmat that you see here. This was created over at StarCityGames.com. It's It's really beautiful, first of
Yes.
all. I really love the stained glass art on this, and it'll be available for participants at the regionals. The first 200 players to register at each location, so you will get the Robin Alphard token to go with it as well. So this is October 15th in the standard format. Locations will be coming out soon, but you can find out more information. Okay, we actually have locations. So, as we've had with our other regional championships, this is part of the SCG Tour, meaning not only are there great prizes for the winner all the way through the top 32, but you see points here on the SCG Tour along with qualifications for the entire top 8. So, work your way toward the Season 3 Invitational. You can start at regionals as we now have our locations. These are happening all over the country here. We see plenty of locations here, but this one has already happened, that map. So those locations may not be accurate, but you can find the most updated map at starcitygames.com/regionals. Game 2, AJ Kerrigan going to be on the play for this one, as we start off the game on a turn 1 Aether Vial.
This is really the card that allows Merfolk to be a deck in Modern.
Well, I especially love it with all these counter spells out of the sideboard for AJ Kerrigan, right?
Yeah, he'll be able to vial in some Merfolk, leave up negate and or spell pierce mana.
Sleight of Hand, the turn 1 play for Sussino. You see him select a Lightning Bolt off Sleight of Hand. That's something which we thought would come in out of the sideboard as well.
Yep. Keep AJ's Lords off the table.
Harbinger of the Tide, the turn 2 for AJ. You mentioned this was his worst Merfolk, but at the same time, it still is a creature.
Still attacks and blocks. Yeah.
I don't know if it's blocking.
It still attacks.
If Tim swings an Electromancer, I can't tell you how fast AJ will block.
Snap off that block. Not expecting that attack.
Aether Vial went up to 1 on that turn. This gives Sussino a chance to resolve perhaps an Ascension. Once it's on the table, AJ does not have a way to knock the enchantment off. It's not going to be, it's going to be Goblin Electromancer. And AJ will flash in Curse Catcher off the Aether Vial. Now, Goblin Electromancer, though it's fragile, it is the card that most often, when it survives, it leads to your quickest kills.
Yeah, if the more spells you cast in a turn that have any generic mana requirements than their cost, the more mana this generates.
So that turn, AJ vialed in Merfolk, or Master of the Pearl Trident. He attacked for 5, and then says go with 3 mana up. Tim's going to try to combo through it anyway as he starts his 3rd turn on Desperate Ritual.
With the Electromancer in play, I like fighting over the ritual itself. If you're able to fight over rituals on multiple turns, or you're able to put in enough Lords on the following turn to make your attack lethal, then I think you definitely want to fight over this.
I suppose with the Electromancer in play, it's not long before AJ Kerrigan's Curse Catchers and Spell Pierces don't do anything.
Exactly. If Sussino has a fistful of rituals, this can escalate very quickly if this one resolves.
So the Curse Catcher's in play for Kerrigan. He does have 3 mana up, 2 of it's blue. He had 6 counter spells in the sideboard. How many of them are in his hand remains to be seen.
And we've scouted the Lightning Bolt in Sussino's hand. If he has Lightning Bolt, some spell, plus Grape Shot, he can really clean up Kerrigan's table here.
So 3 red mana, that one will resolve. As mentioned before, Electromancer is... Storm does not turn 3 very often, but when it does, it almost always involves Goblin Electromancer.
Yep.
And now here's a spell from Sussino. It's a copy of Manamorphose. If you want a more broken Magic card, when Manamorphose costs 1 less than normal, that is one of the best spells you can play.
+1 mana draw a card. Yeah, sounds kind of degenerate to me.
When spells start costing negative mana that cantrip.
There was never a point in Magic's history where I think they would have printed that card exactly. Even when they were printing Dark Ritual, that was just no way. That's not getting through. Especially since it can be cast for a green mana.
And Sussino's going to go for a 2nd Manamorphose. He's building his mana pool as he cantrips here. Now has 5 mana floating. And he has played 3 spells this turn already.
I think he has Past in Flames too, not to mention 3 or 4 other cards in his hand.
Desperate Ritual, it's the 4th spell of the turn. I mentioned before that window on Curse Catcher. Boy, it's looking very narrow.
And a key difference from modern Merfolk to Legacy Merfolk is Sussino doesn't have to respect a possible Fluster Storm. All of these counter spells can just target one spell.
Kerrigan, 2 cards in hand. The difficulty when you're playing something like Spell Pierce is that Sussino will lead off on rituals, which aren't exactly what you want to be countering. But if you don't counter them, by the time Tim gets to the payoff spell, your counters aren't going to work.
Right. If Kerrigan had a Spell Pierce, I would have really liked to have cast it against the first ritual. At
Maybe the
point,
second, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even just the first one, if Sussino, there's a lot of stuff he could have that makes his hand, even if you counter his second spell after that first ritual resolves.
Desperate Ritual is going to work here, so now 7 mana floating for Tim Sussino.
Yeah, in particular, it's just because the Goblin Electromancer is in play. It just takes a lot of pressure off of Sussino. The mixtures of things that he can have to have a game-breaking turn here, or even game-winning turn here, he can be a lot more lenient on that.
And here looks to be Past in Flames from Sussino. Yeah, Electromancer has now made 5 mana this turn already.
Another card that they really couldn't print if it just did that and wasn't attached to a fragile 2/2.
So this is interesting. So what Sussino does, and I like this, is he casts Past in Flames and then responds to his own Past in Flames with Desperate Ravings.
Yeah, the Ravings would be in the graveyard should the Past in Flames resolve. Put another card from his hand in the graveyard to get flashback as well.
Right. He, however, does it that way because he doesn't want to discard Past in Flames to the Ravings.
Also that. Yeah, the random discard can really bite you.
You see, he loses a Lightning Bolt on the random discard. Now Past in Flames, so Ravings resolved. That Past in Flames is still on the stack right now.
Well, if AJ's counter is negate, there is some argument for waiting for this Past in Flames here.
And then negating the first spell afterward.
Right, though Sussino still has some cards in hand. He
Yeah.
could still have a follow-up. He has 3 mana floating.
I think that's dangerous.
Hasn't made a land drop.
Yeah, so if this resolves, Sussino will start by casting all his rituals.
Yes. Now that Past in Flames is resolved, I feel like this is the last turn of the game.
It is looking that way. So Sussino will start firing off rituals again. Here's Desperate Ritual. If AJ Kerrigan has any interaction, now is the time.
About 5 minutes ago was the time, but it's not getting better.
Here's Desperate Ravings. Desperate Ritual, rather.
A lot of desperate cards in this deck. It's like a theme.
And keep in mind, because it has flashback, that Desperate Ravings in Sussino's graveyard can be flashed back for a single red mana.
Right, because he had it before the Past in Flames, it has the casting cost flashback instead of just having the blue and 2 flashback.
All right, and the fight looks like it happened here on that ritual. AJ Kerrigan had both Spell Pierce and Curse Catcher, so he Curse Catchered it. Tim paid, and now we have Spell Pierce. But Tim is going to wisely get around this. He's going to go ahead and, in response to the Spell Pierce, start casting more rituals.
And I keep going back to it, but that Spell Pierce just had to counter the first ritual if it was going to do anything.
So now that ritual resolves, Spell Pierce is paid for, and Tim's other ritual resolves, and he's back to flashing back spells. His 10th spell is the second casting of Manamorphose.
Some more +1 mana, draw a card.
And Sussino's showing he can do Grape Shot, Flashback, Grape Shot. Now that his Storm's at 10, that's going to be lethal. And that'll be the hand, 2-0. Tim Sussino and Storm is victorious over AJ Kerrigan.